Welcome to the Tackling College Sports Podcast, the definitive resource to help you navigate your way to play college-level sports. Here are your hosts, Chris Legates and Mark Franco, where they want you, the TCS Nation, to be your best.
Welcome, TCS Nation, and thanks for tuning in to the Tackling College Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Franco, and sitting right next to me is my co-host. Lately, he's been crushing the Sweatin' to the Oldies series, Chris Legates. How are you, sir?
I don't know where you come up with this stuff. Week after week, you come up with this stuff, but I'm doing well, and I'm very excited about our guest today.
Exactly. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Bobby Muuss, head coach of men's soccer at Wake Forest, and in just 3 seasons, under his guidance, Wake Forest has an amazing record of 55-8-7, more wins than any other D1 program in that span of time. Welcome, Bobby, and thanks for carving out some time today.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. It's hearing that number is I just got goosebumps. I haven't really looked at it that way. I appreciate the praise.
Staggering.
Yeah. Now we will talk about later in the podcast, Bobby, what we can do about Stanford. Okay.
And great program.
Go ahead, Mark.
All right, let's dive right in here. Bobby, can you take us back to your days at SCSU and UConn and then work your way up to present time to sort of give our listeners an idea of your background, please?
Yeah, I was a goalkeeper growing up in Long Island. I had the opportunity. Coach Ray Reed, Jim O'Brien, Brian Quinn back in the time, Chris Payne gave me an opportunity to join the program. It was a place that felt right for me. You know, the staff, John Dealey was there as a Long Island crew. Mm-hmm. George Kiefer ended up joining the staff after I committed. He was a senior when I was there on my official visit. It's a small world, but went to Southern, and like any young Long Island, I always say punk. I learned the hard way. I thought I was going to come in and be unfit and everything was going to be easy because my family told me how good I was. And I went there my first year and was quite humbled and, had to learn both academically and athletically how to be successful and, some hard love and some good love at the same time. But, got better. Sophomore year, we won a national championship. My junior year, I thought it was my year. I was going to step into hopefully a starting role and, we all want impacts in a program, but unfortunately had a back injury. And it was kind of a whirlwind at that point just because I decided that I wasn't going to play anymore. And Jim O'Brien was going to start the women's program. And Coach Reed asked me if I wanted to start on staff there with the goalkeepers, and obviously jumped at the opportunity to stay in the program that I loved, knowing that I probably wasn't going to be able to compete at the highest level needed to perform. And within a month, then Coach Reed got the UConn job. So, I was like, what am I going to do? I stayed there and transitioned with Coach Lang when he came in for a few months, but knowing Coach Reed offered me the opportunity to finish my degree at the University of Connecticut. And, I jumped, and go there and finish my degree as well as start my coaching career. And I was very fortunate. It took me a little bit longer than I anticipated going with the transfer year and just a change of scenery, trying to do 2 things at once, but graduated in '99 and spent another 2 years at the University of Connecticut. Very, very fortunate to learn a lot about the Division I, not only recruiting process and being in the office with, I think we're 3 of the best coaches in America and a great team. But just, learned what it takes just to be a coach and the grind that goes into it, both on and off the field. And, in 2000, we won the national championship, and Jay Vidovich gave me a call and offered me a position here at Wake Forest as an assistant. I was here for 6 years, and, we had a pretty good run. And, I know I get made fun of a lot. I left in the spring of 2007 to take over to be the head coach at the University of Denver. And, I'm thinking I'm making this great move. And then 6 months later, Wake Forest won the national championship in 2007. But everything happens for a reason. I was ecstatic. People asked me, how did you feel? And I was a proud day, as if I won a national championship. And I celebrated like I did, believe me. But spent eight great years at the University of Denver and, essentially trying to help build something. The athletic director there, Peg Bradley-Doppa, said, we want to build something. And when I first got there, she said, we want to build something here so you can get a big time job one day. And I think it was probably after year 4, year 5, I looked at Peg and I said, Peg, I think we can make the University of Denver a big time job. And I thought we were on the cusp of doing that. And but Coach Vidovich made the jump to the professional league, and Wake Forest opened up 3 years ago, or a little over that, and looked into it, and it was the right time, a good opportunity, obviously, to come back to Wake Forest, where my full-time job status started, and I've been blessed since the day I got back.
Yeah. And certainly the weather's been a little bit different too.
I enjoyed, people like to take shots at Colorado. I heard it a lot when I was recruiting. Believe me, it's always snowing. It's so cold. The weather's awesome in Denver. Yeah, I wouldn't want to live in the mountains, but the weather's great in Denver.
That's true.
But like my wife is from there, and she likes to tell people that it's bad so they don't move. But she has not had success with that because the population is growing.
It's going crazy there. I know. Well, you certainly had a lot of successes. Bobby, can you maybe touch upon some of the toughest challenges as it relates to your career?
Many, right? So many. It starts probably just maybe with the sacrifice of your family, and I think there's people do things different ways, right? There's some people that never leave their home and spend a great amount of time with their family, and I just haven't been able to figure that one out and how to do that. We're always going. I feel like we don't have a recruiting calendar right now. So once the season's over, my first season here, give you an example, my first season here at Wake Forest, we lost in the quarterfinal. We had a 7:00 kickoff on a Saturday night. My staff and I, to get to the DA Academy games on Sunday, so we weren't behind in recruiting after losing in a quarterfinal, drove through the night to get there for the 8:00 games in Florida. So, and then, you're there for 4 days and then you start over, and it's an evolving door all the time. Kids leaving, you got to get new ones if you want to compete at this level. But I think is the big one for me that comes to the top of my head is, when I got my first head coaching job, I think everybody, we critique everybody that we've ever worked with. And when you get your job, you're going to do this differently and you're going to do this differently. And I have to admit, I was confused. Mm-hmm. I was trying to be Ray Reed. I was trying to be Jay Vidovich. I was trying to be the recruiter that I was at Wake Forest, the relationship builder that I was at Wake Forest. And I just wasn't great at anything. Mm-hmm. And, we had a couple of good years early. And then reality hit, and I was humbled quickly with a tough year, where you have to really, find who you are and how do you want things to go. And I think that was a huge challenge for me. And I think the other, it still remains to be a challenge for me on a daily basis is when I accepted this position at Wake Forest. Everybody says it was an easy decision. It was not easy, and the main reason it wasn't easy, well, there's a couple, is my wife is from Colorado, never been to North Carolina in terms of for long periods of time. Mm-hmm. But my daughter lives in Colorado with her mom. So it's still it's a challenge for me on a daily basis, weekly basis to be away from my 12-year-old daughter, Cameron. But we have a great relationship. We talk every day. On off weekends, I do my best to get back to Colorado to spend time with her. I'm actually going there next weekend, but that probably on a day-to-day basis is my biggest challenge.
Yeah, I bet. Well, Chris?
Yeah, that's one heck of a perspective, Bobby. Bobby, our podcast is geared towards that student athlete who wants to continue their athletic career at whatever the next level may be and whatever it's perceived. What do you think are the common denominators that you believe all college athletes need to have to be able to be successful regardless of the level they go play in?
That's a really good question, Chris, because it's I think every one of them, we all talk about it, but, I think it's not always the case of doing, right? I think there's a mentality with the elite athlete, and there's a mentality, right, with, I don't want to say non-elite athlete, just, a person that loves the game and wants to play it for fun. But, you have to have a mentality to even play it, on a daily basis and enjoy doing it. I think the understanding, a true understanding of what you're getting yourself into, no matter what the level is. And I think the biggest problem that I see for athletes is they want something, but they really don't know what they're getting themselves into. So if I say I want to play at a Division III level, right, and I want to have fun, I want to do this, I want to do that. Well, there's a balance, and it's all relative there as well, because you're going to want to play. The academic rigors are going to be hard. And I think some people just don't know what they're getting themselves into, and they make decisions for the wrong reasons. And I think doing research, everybody, especially nowadays, kids want instant success and they want to make instant decisions. Or I have kids that call me, I want to make a decision by this date. Well, who are you talking to? Well, I'm just starting the process. They just want to get it done. And I don't think they really know what they're getting. So they're getting themselves into. So that is, I know that sounds very generic, but if you know the ins and outs, and there's going to be some things that you don't know, right? It's you take a new job, people say this and say that, and then everything's different when you get there. But there's going to be some things where maybe you're uncomfortable that you didn't expect or you didn't know, but you got to know what system a team is playing. I didn't know I had to defend. Well, that should be something that should be asked or articulated to by the staff or by you. I didn't know they had 3 goalkeepers, and I was going to be the 4th one. Right. I just think sometimes they just jump to conclusions and not really asking the deep questions. And I think to be successful, you have to be able to trust your coaches. You have to be able to trust the system, the school. And I think if you start off on the wrong foot, that's tough to bounce back from.
And Bobby, you coach elite athletes who have been on their national teams, professional athletes as well. Does the sport, especially at your level, have to be a passion versus an activity for them to be successful?
I do think you have to look at it as a passion. I think the earlier they can look at it as a job, I think the better for those that want to compete and do this for a living. College soccer is very different than professional soccer. And I think we have a lot of guys that think they want to be professional players, but they want the relationships, they want the interactions, and they want to be able to have a couple of bad days. And I just say there's a big difference between being in a locker room with your best friends, all competing for the same goal, everybody caring about each other, than going and earning a paycheck and putting food on the plate. Where the guy next to you in the locker room is probably cordial and you probably have a good relationship. Well, when it comes down to it, they're trying to feed their family as well. And I think it has to be a passion. It has to be something that you do every day. I think is the importance of taking care of your body, taking care of your mind is at a premium. Yeah. And I think the best ones are pros both on and off the field. And I think, and I say the best pros, long-term pros, we've been successful and fortunate to see guys that have played in the league for 12 years. And we've been seeing guys, unfortunately, that have played in the league for a year or less. Right. And probably if you've asked coaches that dealt with these type of athletes, you can probably pick the ones that just from their experience with them and their love for the game, passion for the game. I'm talking about watching it, breathing it, thinking it all the time. These are the ones that have the most success.
And kind of to piggyback off of that, Bobby, you've had guys like Ian Harkes and Jack Harrison. And speaking to them now as professionals, what has been the biggest adjustment for them?
I think the amount of time, and you have to, like we just said, you have to be on every day. You have to be good every day. And I think is going from a condensed college season to going to an all-year, basically, responsibility, I think that is definitely a challenge. And being around, you were maybe the elite player here, although you were with good players, but now being just one of the guys, and I think that's a change for everybody.
Right.
But I will tell you this, the reason those guys are successful is because of the mentality that they had on a daily basis. And they did. I mean, Ian Harkes is a pro's pro with the way he handled himself off the field, mature, academically driven as much as he was football driven, the way he took care of his body, doing extra work, definitely a pro's pro.
And you were able to see that then, like you knew in college, even from, let's say, a freshman year, that this is a kid. Obviously, his pedigree is what it is with his father, John. But when you looked at him as a freshman, you knew that.
And I got Ian. What did I get? I had Ian for 2 years. Right. So I had him the spring prior to his junior year.
So sophomore, junior.
The one thing, and I think probably the ultimate compliment that I can, say to Ian or about Ian is he hurt his hamstring strain his my first spring here, and we were struggling in the spring. They talk about a struggle. That was a struggle. We were 0-3-3 my first spring. I didn't know what was going on, but I will tell you this and then Ian had a couple of things, minor little things that came up in the falls, when he was here, and take the games out, because games, big time players step up in big time games, but every time Ian trained, he made training better.
Right.
I say not just because of his ability, he just made the players around him better. And I think as they looked up to him and saying, well, if Ian's working hard, I'm going to work hard. And that you don't see that nearly as much. There's a lot of guys that take plays off or days off, and we like to make fun of some of the guys that have little nagging things. We call them pro days. Ian wasn't about pro days. Ian wanted to make himself and the guys around him better each and every day.
What a great message for student athletes. Mark?
Bobby, with many student athletes focusing on one sport these days, can you give us your take and even perhaps the program's take on the pros and cons of the multi-sport athlete?
I was a multi-sport athlete, and I thought it was the best time of my life. Things have changed, right? If you're a multi-sport athlete right now, you're probably viewed that we just talked about the word passion. If this is something that you want to do, well, you can't have passion for multiple things. I think there's professional sports that have a passion for, nonprofit organizations, and I think they're successful at both as well. But I do think is days to get ahead in your sport if you're not focused and concentrating on one thing. We know that you're not going to play in the development academy on the boys' side if you're playing high school basketball and baseball. There's just no time to do it. So is it frowned upon on the college level? I think there is something to be said as someone that is in an intense environment or a good environment on a daily basis, playing and competing with and against nation's elite. They're going to develop or have maybe their transition time when they do get to the next level, college or whatever the level may be, is going to be a little bit easier. I could tell you that I don't remember the last time, guys, that I have recruited a two-sport athlete. Now we've had, it's been a long time, right? And the days of Raheem Hancock, when he was at UConn, was a big-time basketball player.
Right. Yep.
Then I remember Coach Reed and Coach Kiefer going up and watching them play basketball. Marcus Tracy was a very good basketball player, a kid from Connecticut that came here and won the Herman Trophy. Yep. But when it came down to it, we don't have those guys doing that rarely. I mean, and that's not, I wouldn't be, turned away by it. But to play at these elite clubs, they're just not allowed to do it. They're putting all their eggs in one basket, which I think is good in some ways. To be great at two things is difficult, but I do think they lose a little bit, maybe from the social aspect in school. I played basketball because it was a relief from the stress that I had with me wanting to be good at soccer. I just had fun doing it. And I think that we lose that a little bit.
Sure.
Bobby, in your opinion, what do you think is the best way for student athletes who are interested in Wake Forest to get onto your radar?
Too, because it's hard, because I say, in the normal recruiting process, and I you speak globally, and then I can speak about Wake Forest. There's still a lot of people that, use email communication, phone calls, sending videos in the mail. For me, that's great. I'm pretty honest about that whenever I speak on recruiting or at recruiting days or clubs. I normally just forward those on to my staff. We do our best to try to get back to everybody, because the worst thing I want to do is ignore somebody and then we go out and watch them play and they're really good. Mm-hmm. And, well, coach, I sent you an email 3 weeks ago and you didn't respond. So we try to get back to everybody. For me, it's relational based. Like Chris, Mark, you guys have a kid and you reach out. That's a little bit more impactful for me you guys knowing the level, at least what I'm trying to do or compete at, respecting me, the staff and the program, where you're reaching out on behalf of a young man. Especially we don't want parents reaching out on behalf of a young man. That's a bit of a turnoff for me. Well, my son is very busy. Otherwise, he would have written this email. Well, he's going to be a heck of a lot busier here. Does that mean that you're going to come to practice for him? I've never seen that happen, but I get plenty of emails that way. Yeah. So they're not nearly as busy in high school as they are going to be at a place like Wake Forest at the college level, competing in the ACC and trying to master their craft. But for me, we do use. I know this is not a camp plug or a commercial, but we definitely use camp where this is an opportunity, myself and staff, where maybe there's some kids that aren't in the DA that we don't get out to see and play as much, where this is 3 days that we're able to watch them play. We had a kid that came to camp last year, didn't even know him. An alumni called me about him and said, hey, take a look at this kid. And we had him committed by the Friday after that camp.
Wow.
Yeah. We're all, it's camps are money makers, 100% guys. But at the same time, is if we can find players through that avenue and be able to have a hands-on interaction with them, that's a great opportunity as well. But I do think it's going through somebody that if you're just doing like a cold call, an email, it definitely helps to have some type of relationship with somebody that knows them both on and off the field.
And when we talk about the recruiting process itself, Bobby, too, and we talk about the DA and we talk about ID camps and things of that nature, which, of course, an ID camp, as you said, is sometimes a moneymaker 100%. But also, what's your take and the program's take on recruiting services?
Yeah, I always say, and this is not always the case. So, it's never always 100%. But I feel as if the players and the student athletes that we recruit, and again, I can speak for Wake Forest, is they don't need a service.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Their game does the service. Right. And believe me, if you guys coaches, parents even, right? Like I'd have a parent tell me about a kid they saw, their son play. Their game does the recruiting for them. It's there's so many young men playing and young women playing soccer in America. You could say, well, they're not going to be noticed. Oh, believe me, they will be noticed and they'll be talked about if their game does the talking. And that's where there's some services that, would probably definitely help initiate those conversations, but ultimately the game does. We talk about highlight tapes, and one of my big things with my staff is we get a lot of videos, obviously, or YouTubes or, the other sites that are online. And for me, it's like, okay, we just saw a 4-minute highlight tape and there was only 2 highlights maybe per game.
Right.
Athlete that we're recruiting. I want their highlights to be all from one game. That means they're dominating in that performance and dominating in that situation. And I think a lot of these services, they're putting together videos from 3 years in 2 minutes. Right. That's in my opinion. So I think their game sells it more. I'm not saying that these companies don't maybe help some student athletes. I could just speak from my experience, at least that, we're just very blessed and fortunate to be able to handpick who we bring in.
No, and we've had 30 some odd guests on here who've all pretty much agreed with what you've said with this as well. And the Tackling College Sports podcast really is trying to get across to people you don't need to spend a lot of money on the recruiting process, that your game can do the talking and you yourself and your parents can do the heavy lifting to get you recognized. So, for us, it's really good to hear that.
Chris, I think that the big thing for me is there is going to be some people in these different areas of the country that need a little bit more help. Mm-hmm. Right. Let's be honest, right? There's some unheard of areas. There's good players. Right. You hope that the word of mouth. We play on, for instance, I'm leaving Saturday. We play at 2 against Virginia to end the spring. I'm getting on a plane at 6:30 to head to the Midwest to go watch a player from Minnesota that plays in a very, very small club that a good friend of mine recommended.
Wow.
You know what I mean? But and it's not a company, but he was playing against this young man. I got to call Bobby. You know what I mean? So there's, but some of these small areas and maybe not known for being soccer hotbeds, there's players,
Right.
And they definitely need some help sometimes too.
And you speak to all the matches that you see and tournaments that you see. Can you speak to a little bit about character of players? So when you're watching a player, what's a red flag that may be like, wow, you know what? This player is not somebody that we want at Wake Forest. Or maybe that we do want.
I have, it's kind of funny you say that because I normally do a little bit, I'll definitely go out and do some first sightings, meaning like going and watching games and bringing names back. But a lot of times now in my role here is the staff goes out and they try to get some names and then I try to go with them or I'll go by myself. And the first thing they'll say is like, I like them, but I don't think you're going to like them. That's kind of funny. And the reason being is because there's a couple of things, at least for me, and we talked about, even my sessions I did at Mohegan Sun for the Champions Clinic. For me, is reactions has a lot to do with if I'm going to, have a like for a player. And reactions is not just winning the ball back. It's the reactions to if the ball's not played where he wants it, is he reacting to his teammate positively or negative? Coach says something to him, what is he doing? Referee makes a call. What is the reactions? Because those are all coachable moments or really signs of coachability or not, right? Or really just character. And, I always say that character is shown in times of adversity, especially as an athlete. And, we see that on the field with some guys throwing their hands in the air after they miss a chance or there's no call, walking back. For me, are guys that just want to grind, and they turn the ball over. They work extremely hard to win it back. That, they're not defending, they're not tracking back. Coach gets on them. You see a reaction positively where, he shakes his head and gets after it. He just had to wake himself up a little bit. Guy overhits the ball, underhits the ball, gives his teammate a thumbs up, works hard to win it back. Really the biggest thing for me, and I said it about Ian Harks, is we're in a situation, yes, that I can go and I think it's easy to pick out the best players on the field. Mm-hmm. Players that making the other players around them better, right? What are their players' interactions with them as teammates? Do they not say anything to them because they're scared of the way they're going to react? Or is there this open engagement and communication where they know that guy has their back and vice versa? I think in today's day and age, I think I'm doing a talk tomorrow about there's a lack of leadership, but I also think there's a lack of players being able to be led. Mm-hmm. Be led because they're not held accountable. And I think is how are players not only leading, but how do they take leadership? I think that's a big thing, especially when you go from playing most of the time at your own age, then coming in and playing with guys almost 3 or 4 years older than you. Sure. You're going to have to learn how to be led, right? Sure. These guys have experience playing at the highest level in college soccer. How are you going to take that feedback? And I'm big on trying to hold my best players just as accountable, if not more, than maybe my lower guys. So how are they going to react to me? And I'm a relationship guy. I'm an energy type guy. Mm-hmm. And those are some of the things, Chris, that I look for. And, I think those are the positives and the negatives all in one.
And just to piggyback off of character, Bobby, and your message is spot on to me as far as I'm concerned. When you first started your coaching career, we didn't have to deal with social media and things of that nature. How do you and your staff deal with social media and any stories that you may want to share about pros and cons of it?
We had a speaker to the athletic department the other day, and I'll get into that in a second, but in touching upon the social media part, I don't, as an athletic department as a whole, I know they track almost all the student athletes, if not every one of them. Mm-hmm. I could tell you that I friend or like or request every one of my student athletes and even my recruit social media. Now, the ones that accept me or allow me access to that, right. You should see is as soon as their eligibility is done and they leave, I mean, like my man Louis Agudo playing with the Columbus Crew confirmed my friend request the day he got drafted in the MLS. Yeah, no, now he likes me.
Now you follow. Yeah, now you can follow him. Yeah,
no, they'll accept me now. Yeah, and now I see all the crazy things that goes on. They won't like me prior to that.
Right.
So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we have chat rooms that the staff is on that I try to stay at. And obviously we want to manage that there's nothing inappropriately going there, but this is, in today's day and age, this is sell yourself positively or negatively. And my mom and my sister, I do this for a living, and my sister would say something on her social media, and then I text her, and she's like, "Leave me alone." Okay, I'm just trying to help you, and I think she's younger, but I think today's day and age, we have to remind our guys that along with coming to a place like Wake Forest, we have a ton of community involvement. We have an incredible community following. These guys in some ways are celebrities here in Winston. And there's a lot of young kids that follow them.
Yeah.
They portray themselves as extremely important, and I had a conversation with a young man. I just said, I didn't think it was a very positive comment. It could view you and other people negatively. And I was looking through who follows you, right? And some of our support groups kids are ones that follow you, and they look up to you. What type of message does that send? And I think, if you play at Spry Stadium on a Saturday night in front of 5,500 people, it puts some of that stuff into perspective. And so we try to use that as a little bit of a motivational factor, and just knowing how helpful and how hurtful it can be.
I just want to interject quickly, Bobby. Have you had any situations where you were looking at a recruit and there were some issues when as it pertains to social media, or has that not come up in your history?
We have not. We have not. I will tell you, I won't bring up the kid's name, but it's actually that positively more than negatively. I believe I'm a man of faith, and I always struggle like anyone else. And this is a true story. I was looking at a young man, and I went on his Twitter page, and I saw a couple of things, and I saw a couple of Bible verses and some things he was doing in the community. And I went in the next day, and the staff and I were a little bit in between on if we were going to offer him. And this was at the University of Denver. And I told the staff, I said, I'm going to make him an offer tonight. And they looked at me like, okay, how much are you going to offer him? And I didn't tell him. And I think the next morning he committed. And then they asked me how much. I gave him a little bit more than I thought I was going to, because I wanted that human being.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that and to be honest with you, he's the captain of their program now and led them to a Final Four 2 years ago. So, I look smart by doing it, but that had nothing to do with me.
Good intuition.
But I do. Yeah. That was more positive than it was negative.
It's excellent.
Wow.
Mark.
Bobby, since the beginning of your career as a coach, how have things changed for you as it relates to the recruiting process? And again, good or bad?
I think it's a lot more accelerated. When I was a coach, you were able to. I remember when I was here as an assistant, Jay Vidovich and I would put together a schedule for that first week of July when we were allowed to talk to kids and actually visit them. And we would go from house to house on the first 4 or 5 days to our top guys and almost convince them to take official visits, during the fall, get them out here, spend 2 days on campus. We fly them in, we treat them. It's also a reason that I was 25 pounds heavier than I am today, because I was taking them out. I took them out to 3 meals a day, and I love that process. But it is, I think, the real intimate relationships. Maybe that's not a word that people want to use in recruiting, but like just to understand, to get into someone's house, to see how they interact with their family, how they interact with their siblings, just being in their environment than sitting on my couch for maybe an hour on an unofficial visit and through text messages, some phone calls. This is the way that we have to navigate, identifying people, and it's not that easy. So that's definitely changed. Yeah. I do think leadership, instant success, kids wanting to have an impact in a program, the stature and the expectations here at Wake Forest are to win championships and to get some of the best student athletes in the country. And I think kids don't listen. They only hear what they want to hear, and that's both positively and negatively. And so now, I think I almost ask them to let me know at the end of our conversations, even if it's my current student athlete or recruits, it's like, so let's go over what we just talked about. Just so they don't leave here in 2 totally different things, because I could have said 3 things positive, 1 negative, and they only heard the negative.
Right.
And trying to make sure we're emphasizing the right things in these conversations, because I do think it's we take away only what we want to hear. And I think that's a big thing that's not only changed with the recruiting process, but it's also changed in, the current student athlete, and then I use that as an example is, I had a young man committed to another school. My staff was upset with, what did you say to him? Because he said that you said you didn't want him to be a pro. And I said, that's not what I said to him. And I said, if he thought that's what I said, we didn't get him for all the right reasons. I said, my job is not to make you a pro. My job is to make sure that you get one of the best degrees in the country, right? You're doing everything you can to develop both on and off the field as a person and as a player, and that you have a passion to win in a national championship. I said, I don't care if you become a pro.
Yeah.
Three things, you know what I mean? I think that gives you the best opportunity. He took it as, I was anti him becoming a pro, so he didn't come here. So that's the where it gets lost a little bit. And recruiting, the biggest thing at this level is, why are they coming to your school? The club soccer has changed, right? So I was growing up, I played club soccer. I wanted to do the best I can possibly be to have an opportunity to go to Southern Connecticut, an opportunity to go to UConn, an opportunity to go to a Wake Forest, both athletically, and academically.
Wow.
Guys are playing club soccer in the way this culture's changed in America to be professionals. There's no doing that. Well, come to Wake Forest, I can be a pro quick. I can't stand hearing that. And we're trying to sift through that, because there's no quick way of being a pro. Right. There may be a quick way of getting there, pro. All right. And I always say the real pros are the 8 to 10 year guys, not the 1 to 3 year guys. Because, I know the NCAA likes to have the commercial, a lot of them are going to be professional in something other than their sport. You're still probably going to need to get a job after you're professional in this country.
Absolutely.
And I think we don't see that right now. All they're thinking is, I want to be a pro. And that has changed my recruiting philosophy in so many ways.
Chris?
That's great stuff, Bobby. I got to tell you, I'm getting to know you through this process has been awesome. And it's a message that I hope student athletes, parents, everybody listens to. And kind of going off of that now with parents, what would you advise parents that their role in the recruiting process is?
I think support. Ask of your son or daughter to ask the questions. To space and time to ask those questions and to answer the questions, I think. But definitely to be supportive. I think we all think we know our kids better than anybody. But something, we all probably thought we knew our girlfriends, our boyfriends, our husbands, our wives better than anybody. And they can walk into a brand new house and you think this is the one they want, but then they want the one down the street for some total different reason that you never knew. And I think this process is very unique. And it's very much like house hunting in some ways, right? They walk on and there's a feel for it. It may have the feel, but the kid may not. And I think the parents don't have to go to school for 4 years. When they're on campuses, give them a little bit of their space. Yes, you can ask the questions that you want to know. Are they going to be supported? You know what I mean? The student athlete welfare questions, 100%. But I also think your questions may differ from maybe the student athlete's questions, and giving them their space to do that. I love when parents come on campus, please. I think Wake Forest is a parents' campus. But it is extremely important that the student athlete interact with the coaches, the student athlete interact with the student athletes and ask their own questions, because those are going to be the ones that are going to be in the trenches. But definitely be there guiding them and giving them knowledge too. I would say as well, honest, and we can be, and I'm a parent, right? I have 3 children and my kids are the best at everything in my mind. But at the same time, I do this for a living. I told my daughter, you're not very good at soccer. I think we need to think about something else. You know, I knew at an early age this was not going to be a passion for her or me for her to watch her do this. You know, when I got to a game and her mom told me she punted the ball in her own goal, I knew we had some problems. You know, and I was a goalkeeper. I worked on all week with punting, you know, and then she flipped one right over her head straight into the net. It was over. You know, the career was over. But I do think they're going and they're looking at one of the best academic schools in the country, and you know they struggle academically. Well, maybe their athletic passion wants them to go to that school, but are they going to be happy? Like I always say, can you get kids into school? Most schools can. Trying to stay and balancing what they love to do and playing the sport or a sport, you know, and competing academically. Because you're going to realize when you get to this level, to do well in school. Everybody's here to get an education, you know, even the athletes. And I think that puts a lot of extra pressure on some kids. And I think sometimes that can go reverse. The parents want that big name school, and the kids want to be happy and have a balance. Right. And I just think that open line of communication is crucial.
Well, so far, Bobby, you've answered the easy questions. You've played in big games, coached in Final Fours, won national championships at UConn as well. But I don't know if you've ever gone through what you're going to go through soon in the line of questioning called the Getting to Know You portion of our podcast. Cue it up, Mark. Here you go.
Will do.
Getting to know you, getting to know all.
Oh, man. All right.
Never get older, man.
It never gets old. No. All right. Okay. Here's Mark, and I hope you're ready for this. You have a Gatorade, you have a towel, because it's going to get rough for you now, Bobby.
You're getting me a little nervous. I'm not going to lie to you.
Okay. Question number 1. If we were to search your phone, what would be the top 3 played songs or artists?
That's a tough one. Carrie Job is, I know that sounds, you know, I'm the super competitive man, but the reason that she's on there all the time is I listen. We will learn more about me probably come forth with some stuff, but I love Christian music. So I listen to her on the way to Starbucks and on the way home from Starbucks on game days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, you know, 4 to 6 times a week, easy, same song over and over again. And it started because we won when she was on the radio. Yep. So it just continues, you know, continuing along that, probably Chris Tomlin and Toby Mac, all Christian artists.
Yep. In fact, Chris Tomlin was another answer.
Yep.
Renee.
Yep.
Chris
Yep. We've had other guests who have mentioned Chris Tomlin. Yep.
My oldest daughter, she every once in a while there'll be a song on, and you know I'll YouTube it and send it to her, and we talk about it. She's a Chris Tomlin fan as well.
Oh, that's great. Question number 2. Who is the most famous person you have in your contact list?
That's a loaded question. Depends on who's famous to who,
that's
right?
Yeah,
that's right.
For the young generation, Jack Harrison.
Sure.
Because he obviously went on a big transfer, right? He's big time in his own mind, but no, playing at Middlesbrough now.
Yeah.
You know, but since we talked about Ian before, I'm not going to say Ian Harks, but his dad, John.
Sure.
John's in there. I grew up with a poster of John on my wall, and then I end up coaching his son. That's pretty cool. And then I go one further, and Jose Maria Baquero. You know, that's a Barcelona legend, captained them to a Champions League. I think he's obviously just got done coaching his son John, but to be able to call him a friend is something that you have to pinch yourself every once in a while to say as well.
Question number 3. Do you have a favorite quote or quotes?
I have a couple, but I say it to the guys all the time because I like to think that I got my act together. I say failure to prepare is preparing to fail.
Yep. Excellent. Question number 4 is, can you give the listeners a little known fact about yourself?
I'm extremely superstitious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, to the point where we were in a locker room transition 2 years ago. And we were in a temporary locker room. They were building us a new one. And we were the last person standing in this building. Mm-hmm. Recreation was taking it over. And we were on the 3rd floor. And we basically, old offices, they transitioned into a temporary locker room for us. And there was locker rooms across the hall. and we went on. We had a pretty good year. We were on a good little run and a shutout streak, and they did not have hot water or electric, like no lights. My staff and said, "Hey, coach, is Coach Muuss doing this intentionally because we're winning right now?" And we didn't have it last week. Like, that's how bad it is. Like, they
know.
think anything we do. Yeah, it could be food. We eat at a meal. They know darn well we lost to Clemson in the spring. There's no chance we'll ever eat, travel, same bus company, nothing.
Right.
Everything will be
That's
different in
brilliant.
the fall.
Love that.
Question number 5. Who is the biggest influence in your life? Who has been the biggest influence, I should say?
Easy one is my grandmother.
Okay.
Lived with my grandmother through high school. We used to have, 1 or 2 nights a week before I lived with her, sleepovers, and they were the highlight of my week. My biggest fan, my biggest confident, closest person in my life, hands down.
That's great. Question number...
Still 87 years old, works full time.
All right.
Wow. That's something.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Answer is Jesus Christ himself, but I'll go on a soccer side of it. I'd say right now Jurgen Klopp, because I love Liverpool.
Yeah.
Jurgen Klopp, and then maybe my grandfather after Jurgen, although I love him, but he wouldn't be able to talk soccer. He would want to talk about how good the Mets are this year.
Yeah, right.
Which is good. I'm happy about
Chris
that.
is a big- Chris is a big
Good thing
fan.
for all.
Yeah.
I love the Mets.
All right.
Question number 7. If you weren't coaching, what do you think you would be doing?
Every year we lose, we'll lose a game or two, and it could be in a row, and obviously, there's going to be years I lose a lot more. But after a loss, you can ask my wife. I come home and I say, I don't think I want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
It's the quick response, right? You have a bad day at work.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate this job. I want to get
done.
a different one.
Yep.
And my wife is always very understanding, and she looks at me and she says, "Honey, what do you like to do?" Like, she's going to be supportive, right? She doesn't work right now. We're just not going to have a job. She's fine with it. And I said, I have no idea. And to this day, I still really have no idea what I would do if I wasn't coaching.
Right.
That's actually a good answer to have.
It's a great answer. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of my driving forces. I tell you, 3 years ago, we had my daughter, and I just said, what just happened? She's like, yeah, we had a daughter. I'm like, no. I said, every game just became more important, because if we lose, I have no idea what we're going to do now. Now I have 2 mouths to feed, right? Plus you. Then we had my son, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now what am I
That's
gonna do?
motivation.
So, yeah, that's the best motivation there is to win games.
Number 8. This is probably the toughest one. What is one thing you believe that others might think is crazy?
Almost everything I do in terms of my superstitions.
Yeah.
I literally, it is. There's so many. I don't wash my game day clothes, and I mean my game day clothes, like everything. You guys can use your imagination, but until if we lose, then I'll wash them and clean them up. But we were 19-1, or 19-2 2 years ago. You can imagine how that was. And we start in August, right? And it's not cold, it's not cool. There's some sweating going on, and then we end in the winter. So I think my staff gets quite excited when I have to start wearing winter jackets on the sideline.
Nobody's standing downwind.
It's almost, I would say, almost every superstition that I have from.
Perfect.
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
Question number 9 is, what is your morning ritual?
I stop at Starbucks every day. I have to have coffee, but my morning ritual is pretending that I'm sleeping, although I know the kids are up screaming and yelling, just for at least an extra 15 minutes, maybe a half an hour if I'm really feeling tired, and then spend a little bit of time with them, and then head to the office.
Perfect.
Nothing special, pretty boring.
And lastly, what book or books are you currently reading or have just read?
Last night, it's called Will to Live. And the author of the book, John, he came and spoke to the athletic department the other day, and pretty engaging. So just started that last night.
Wow, excellent.
Wow. I'll tell you what, Bobby, you crushed it. You knocked it out of the park, to give you a little bit of a Mets reference, and I know Mark's got a sound effect just for that right
Does
now.
he get that? Yeah.
He gets to, yeah.
Yeah, yep. You scored
Deserving.
9 1 inning
It's deserving.
yesterday against the Washington Nets, which would you like?
Yeah, they crushed them last night with the big grand slam from Cespedes. Yeah, sure. But a lot of coaches, people who have sat in that hot seat, have folded under that line of questioning. Bobby, not you. It's obvious that you're a pro.
No doubt.
I don't know about that, but I appreciate it.
My final question, getting back on track, Bobby, from all this silliness right now, is my former coach, Sasha Sharovsky, has kind of become a little bit of the face of the split season, I guess is the best way to kind of term it. But could you tell us how you feel about it, and where do you think it's going to go?
I speak for myself, and I speak for Wake Forest as a whole, administrators, athletic directors, student athletes, staff. We're definitely with Sasha in terms of in favor of going through, and now it's called the 21st Central model. We've made some adjustments. The ACC conference is really trying to be, spearhead this. I think as a coaching body, we feel as if, we'd like to consider ourselves, the best soccer conference in the country, and something that we feel is going to better our sport in the short term and especially in the long term. Should be, pushed forward by us, and we're doing what we can. And I think the biggest thing is just educating the people, that make these decisions. And I think the more we educate it, the more time we sit down with SWAs and faculty reps and athletic directors, the more positive the feedback has been. The direction that it goes. My hope is that it's, it's on the docket, next time around to be voted on. There's a lot of work to be done still. And, I still, I have faith. I know there's a lot of powerful people in the soccer world that would like to see this happen. And we're going to keep plugging away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 26 years in the college soccer game now, and to me, it's a no-brainer for the Division I level. And I'm not just talking about the part about developing players for the next level, but I'm talking about from a student-athlete well-being standpoint. And I really do hope it happens, because I think it will help revolutionize the college game, bring it to the 21st century, like you said. And you talk about that one thing people think is crazy that they don't. Sasha believes that the game can become profitable in the United States, and I believe it can too.
Yeah, think about, Chris. You think about, maybe this is a little naive, and and even sometimes, in some ways arrogant or cocky, but Wake Forest, a lot of programs in the ACC have sent so many guys to the MLS that we've been successful after years of college. Right. This model, what's the real necessity of having all this money wrapped up into USL teams, and why sign a kid and play him in the USL when you can send him to a college and not only develop him as a soccer player on the same timeline, but develop him into a man, and take the risk out instead of signing an 18, 19-year-old before he goes to college or after his first year, and see what type of man, he turns into, and let someone else do that free of charge for you. And then when they're ready, then you sign them, and hopefully they have a little bit more of an impact in the first team level.
Excellent. Mark.
Bobby, as we wrap up here, is there anything that you wish to promote or discuss that we haven't covered up to this point?
I think so. I think what you guys are doing is great, and trying to, educate in all sports the recruiting process and what college soccer or college sports is all about. I just think the one thing that I would say, Mark, it's an everyday thing, and I think is the way you treat yourself, the way you eat, the way you sleep. We monitor our guys sleeping, their moods. We try to do everything we can to have the best student athlete experience, but it is an everyday thing. And, as you're looking at schools and you're making these decisions, you have to find a school that aligns with what your commitment level is going to be, not what you think it's going to be, but what you really believe it's going to be. And I think then there's a place for everybody. There's a place for everybody to play any sport they want. They just have to find the right place.
Well said. And lastly, how can listeners get in touch with you?
Loaded question too. Here, I'll give you my cell phone number. No, I'm kidding. We use a general email here at Wake Forest for any type of communication. We're a pretty open book, and if there's people in town, soccer fans, soccer coaches, that want to come to trainings, want to come to games. All we ask is that you reach out and let us know. And, we definitely, there's no hidden secrets here. It's not rocket science what we're doing. Always welcome, but it's wfsoccer@wfu.edu.
Okay, and you got a spare room at your house too if anyone wants to stay over, right?
I think my oldest daughter, when she comes visits, would be upset if everything worked.
Just have to work around that schedule. That's all. Well, listen, once again, we've been speaking with Bobby Muuss, Wake Forest men's head coach soccer. We truly, truly appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, and all the best. Before you head out, just sit so I got a couple of things to wrap up here. So our contact info on the web is tacklingcollegesports.com. Make sure you sign up with your first name and email to be included in the Friday Five. It's a weekly email of 5 sports-related items that we think might be of interest to you, the TCS Nation. Email us at tacklingcollegesports@gmail.com. Facebook is Tackling College Sports. Twitter at Tackling College. Instagram is Tackling College. Gosh, that's a lot of
Yeah, a lot of
got
social
a lot
media.
of social media stuff going on. And until next time, be your best.
Be your best.
Your college sports future awaits. So join the TCS Nation and be your best.